It's a consumption-based tax. It hurts people at the lower end of the spectrum. You can compensate for that, as I say, by figuring out what subsistence and above subsistence is and have actually people get a check in return that reflects that. And then people consume, and those who have more money consume more than those of us who don't have as much money. They would pay proportionately more. Now, that's revolutionary, that's radical. Do I think it's going to happen? I don't think so. But I think Art Lack probably has some analysis there. Yes, ma'am.
Back to your housing. I've always wondered, and you look in the paper on the, in the paper of all the people that are having their houses. Anyway, how did they ever figure out that person, one single person, especially a woman, could handle a $500,000 loan? It's sole property.
Well, I mean, look, it depends on individual.
Somebody was really.
Well, look, it depends on individual circumstances, and we had a housing bubble in California, in the United States, but in California, which burst, and in our area, this area, Greater Sacramento region, the increase in housing values did not correspond to an expanding economy with new workers coming in, with new jobs coming in that would have sustained that. And so we're particularly prone to this particular problem. And I think most people now recognize that buying a house is to buy a house and not to take equity out for buying other things. But that's not the circumstance of everybody. A lot of people got in when the prices were already high. That's where they were. They haven't had the problem in Canada, I understand. In fact, they haven't had as serious a problem in Texas as we've had in California, in part because they had more stringent requirements for down payment than we had. And I think there's some inventive programs where you put sweat equity in, but I think we went beyond that. And I think we actually created a circumstance where people created their own vulnerabilities as a result of putting very, very little money down and leveraging very, very high numbers. Secondly, I think, frankly, the lending institutions got the position, instead of looking across the table to see if you could be good for paying your mortgage for the next 30 years, they just want to know that you can pay it for the next year because they're going to sell that paper as soon as possible. And the reason they sell that paper is that you had Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac establishing secondary markets in which the underwriting was not as serious as it should be. And as I say, you package together 100 suspect loans, suddenly that new bundle of suspect loans becomes a valuable instrument. I mean, it defies logic. And so we got in this mess together, but government, I think, exacerbated it by the way Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac operate. Thank you. All right, let's get another person way in the back. Make sure we run back, there's somebody back there. Got to keep this young man working. You picked somebody back there. Raise your hands, folks.
Yes, I have 2 points. The first one is on this whole question of the debt ceiling fight. I mean, if I was reading recently that 6 times during Bush's administration, the debt ceiling was raised, and in fact about 40 times in the last 30 years, the debt ceiling has been raised. It's, you know, it's just done and taken for granted, and no one makes a big deal about it. So why is it that such a fuss is made now about it? And I would like to say that especially George Bush doing it 6 times, when it's been under George Bush's administration that $2.5 trillion has been added to our debt, with the tax cuts for the rich. Another $1.5 trillion about added with 2 wars. So, you know, anyway, and I would, then the other point is massive cutting. Cut. Really, it's not going to accomplish anything. It'll accomplish the exact opposite. What we have to do today is spend money to make jobs instead of cutting. What we have to do is follow what Roosevelt did in the 30s when he created the WPA. That is where the money comes from. If Obama's stimulus had been about 4 or 5 times as big as it was, we wouldn't be in the problem that we have now. He just didn't make it big enough. Now, and one more, this is for you, because you said a while ago that you would like to, you'd really be happy if you could find a corporation that hadn't paid its taxes. Well, here from Citizens for Tax Justice is Boeing's reward. That's aircraft maker Boeing's in Seattle. I worked for them for 2 years during World War II. And Boeing's reward for paying no federal taxes over the last 3 years has been a $35 billion federal contract. Can you explain that?
Well, maybe I'm old-fashioned, but I grew up in Long Beach, and we had McDonnell Douglas, which before that was Douglas, which is now Boeing. They're not making the number of aircraft they made before. Frankly, I'd be happy if they were making profits, because that would reflect the fact that they were making airplanes and that we were creating jobs. We used to have between 10 and 20,000 employees there, a number of them parents of the children that I grew up with. Frankly, I think that's a good thing, not a bad thing. I want to see more aircraft built by Boeing in the United States, so I have to disagree with the National Labor Relations Board that's trying to penalize them for creating jobs in South Carolina as well as creating jobs in the state of Washington. Look, I'm not going to suggest that what you said is socialism, but what I would say is Margaret Thatcher made a great point a number of years ago. She said the problem with socialism is pretty soon you run out of other people's money. You know, the idea that all we need is a larger stimulus package when the one that we had was demonstrably a failure, I think is just wrong. I appreciate the fact you disagree with me, but I disagree with you. Now, the point I made at the beginning was exactly consistent with what you said. Yes, I said in the past we have raised the debt ceiling. There hasn't been much controversy. That's the problem. That's why it seems to me we should have made it a big deal, so that people would understand. Now, George Bush did spend too much money. I mean, I went to the White House and I told him. I came back from a town hall meeting and I said, Mr. President, the people back home think you're spending too much money. You haven't vetoed a single bill. This was, I think, the 6th year of his 8 years. He hadn't vetoed a bill at that time. And he looked at me and said, well, Dan, I threatened to. And, no, I'm honest. This is what the President said. And I said, Mr. President, that's not good enough. I do believe that he spent too much money. You want to talk about wars? I'm reminded 9/11 we were attacked. We were attacked by a transnational terrorist organization that was aided and abetted by the government, the Taliban, in Afghanistan. You know, I mean, we got attacked. I don't apologize for us going after the people who attacked us and those that assisted them for attacking us. If you and there were other reasons why the president went in for Iraq, and we can argue about that. I was not in Congress at the time. When we got in there, I have to believe we have a commitment to our troops that have been committed by the Commander-in-Chief to make sure that they get support. Now, if you want to talk about Libya, I've been very, very specific about my criticism of Libya because I don't think the president's articulated a mission there, or when they've articulated a mission to us, the mission on the military side is inconsistent with the mission on the diplomatic side. And I think they ought to be one and the same. I don't see how you can say On the one hand, our diplomatic objective, or overall objective, is to get rid of Gaddafi. But on the other hand, our military mission is merely to protect civilians. Those are two different approaches, and I don't think you ought to commit troops unless you know exactly what your mission is. Having said that, I did not vote to cut off support for those men and women who were already there. But I did not support the President's overall mission as he established it, because I thought it was either either unarticulated, or it was incapable of being articulated, because I think there was confusion there. So I do think that we better look at the commitments we make worldwide and see if what we are committing in terms of our defense is sufficient to meet those strategic objectives. And I do have faith in the President's Secretary of Defense, Leon Panetta, someone with whom I served in the House of Representatives. I've worked with over the last couple of years when he was the head of the CIA. I happen to think he is an honorable public servant, a dedicated member of the Democratic Party, someone that I disagreed with. Oftentimes we were in Congress together, but I respect it, and I continue to respect, and I think he will do as good a job as anybody of presenting to us, on your behalf and to the American people generally, a strategy, an approach, and a reason why they're spending what they are spending. And I think you will see some different things coming out of the Defense Department with Leon Panetta there. So while I have some strong disagreements with the President on any number of things, I fully embrace his nomination of Leon Panetta to that position. I look forward to working with Leon Panetta. Yes, sir.
Has anybody looked at fair trade, NAFTA, CAFTA, and all these trade agreements? I mean, as long as we have China, the WTO, we've got manufacturing running down to Mexico to pay guys $10 a day. All of our jobs are going, talk about the place ranch for over 600 people they were going to hire. They're not going to hire nobody once they can figure out to get to China, get it produced over there, or get it produced over in Mexico. Without manufacturing, that's the backbone of the economy. And if nobody looks at it, we're never going to turn around.
Well, I would agree with you that we need to do things that are necessary to sustain and support the manufacturing base in the United States. I would disagree with you that the trade agreements penalize us. In fact, the trade agreements give us an opportunity to be able to create and take advantage of markets overseas on the one hand. On the other hand, it actually, in many cases, allows us access to the markets where we've never had it before. And in some cases, for instance, the Colombian Free Trade Agreement that's before the Congress, it actually would allow us to be in a more advantageous position than we are at the present time.
But you just look at the map. How much product are we selling to China versus how much stuff we're buying in Walmart? We're not taking advantage of their market. We're taking advantage of their labor, and we're losing our jobs as a price.
Well, look, when I talk to that one company in Rancho Cordova that has another one that has 200 employees and produces a set of tools that nobody else can produce. The reason they're able to compete with China, India, and everywhere else in the world is that they stay ahead of them with R&D. And they surround their workers with more capital investment, which allows them to be more productive, even though they're paid at far higher rates than those in India and China and other places. That's the way we're going to do it.